Okay, we did call this meeting to attention. We are not doing introductions. We have not called anything to order yet. It's 6:45. Okay, moving along. I see Pat is on. She is also a community board member, not this committee.
Hi, thank you for the acknowledgement. Good evening, everyone. My name is Pat Watler Johnson. I've been a West Harlem resident for nearly 30 years now. And while I've lived here, I've served in various capacities in the community, as well as retired from New York State government, from New York State DHCR, hi Wayne Benjamin, and from OTDA. And I currently serve on the CB9 Seniors Committee, and I am one of two representatives to the West Harlem Development Board, West Harlem Development Corporation Board. Hi, Vince Morgan. And I guess that's it.
Thank you. Anita,
thank you.
One of our public members. So just a quick explanation. Public members are folks that have applied through the board to be public members of the committee. Very important to us. They help us do some of the legwork and some of the things that we need lots of help doing, but they aren't official community board members, but they are here with our committee still. So Anita.
Oh.
Hi Anita.
Yeah, there's so much to do.
I know.
And so very happy to be, I've been joining virtually usually, but decided to come in to thank you guys for the letter of support of last time. Thank you very much.
So welcome. Did I miss any community board? Any community board members I missed online? Sometimes I can't see everyone. All right, so that's who's on the line from the community board and such. We've got some guests tonight, and I want to jump into our rest of our agenda here. So we've got three hopefully quick presentations. We've got HDFC Resource Center. Vince is going to give us an update, and then we act with Cameron, and then we've got Anthony, who was a previous board member, and we're glad to have him back in a different capacity. So they can see him. So let's dive on in. Vince, welcome. We're glad you're here. And Vince, tell us who you are and what you got for us for updates.
Hi, Signe, Liz, how are you? Wayne Benjamin, how are you? Pat, big fan of yours. How are you doing? Anita is there. I'm going to talk about something that's relevant to you and your building. So welcome everybody else who I haven't met, and thank you very much. It was a nice day today, so it's nice to finish up the evening with a nice group from such a day. I don't know how many of you have been to the past couple of events that we've done, but we've had a real focus on Local Law 97, which was a law that was passed in 2019, and this is it. We finally reached the year where compliance data recording is starting, and I've been in constant communication with the city and the New York City Accelerator, which is a program that was set up to implement resources around Local Law 97 compliance. For those of you that don't know, Local Law 97 compliance is every building in New York City over 25,000 square feet has certain benchmarks that they must achieve by the year 2030 or 2035. That's every building. HDFCs and public housing and a few other special categories of affordable housing in New York are precluded from the most stringent reporting requirements, but they fall into a special category under Article 321 of the law, which basically requires the HDFC buildings, public housing, that is over 25,000 square feet. I want to keep saying that, over 25,000 square feet. What is that? If your building has over 20 units in it, you should check to see if you have to fill out this report. The report is going to be a comprehensive overview of carbon emissions and other standards in the buildings. And that will be a one-time report that's due on May 1st of 2025. That date is not changing. The reports are going to have to be commissioned and done by what's called a retro commissioning agent. And that agent should be retained and certified by the city to complete the report for your building. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is that there are resources that are available out there. And, you know, this is the reporting year. So all of the data for your building is sort of compiled over 2024 to complete the report. Now, the issue is that we're already in April. We're already almost to the end of the first quarter. And there has been the typical New York, a lot of stuff gets in the way. Buildings have problems. The wintertime is beyond us. The weather's starting to get warm. They haven't had a flood of buildings that are starting the process out. So they fear, and when I say they, the accelerator and the other entities that are involved with this, that people are going to wait until the last minute, until the later months of the year, and there's going to be a mad rush at the last year, and there's going to be a short supply of available retro commissioning agents. Because remember, these retro commissioning agents are trying to handle every building over 25,000 square feet in the city. So what I am asking for is some help from the community board to reach out to the buildings and community board 9 and make sure if we have contacts in these buildings that they get in touch with me so we can put them in line early and get them access to resources that are available early so they don't get caught up at the end of the line where they have some type of delays because of shortages with these experts that go in. The accelerator, in partnership with NYSERDA and HPD, has launched a program, and this is hot off the press, called the 321 Go program. And the program is designed to help buildings that fall into that affordable housing category. And we've identified 50 buildings that are eligible, that are HDFCs out of the 220 HDFCs that are in Community Board 9 that are eligible for this program. And what the program does is it uses benchmarking data that city has already collected on the buildings. And it basically uses software to give you a guidepost as to what these buildings can do to get started with the process and recommendations on what they can do to actually become compliant over that period of time. But the biggest thing that it does is it allows for the buildings to say that they are in process with the city to meet these compliance standards, whether the report is done or not in May. So what it does is it basically gives those buildings a little bit more time to make sure that they have their ducks in a row, because some of these things may cost some type of financial commitment from the building to make these changes or these implement some of these strategies to actually become compliant. But the report, if it's not turned in, puts the building in danger of getting fined by the city. And these fines are probably in the thousands, no higher than $10,000 to $20,000, depending on what that is. So please, I'm going to give you my information as well as update regularly on our website, which is westharlemdc.org/HDFC. And then I'm Vince Morgan. I would like people to reach out to me if they have any questions so that I can pass them off to our contact person at the New York City Accelerator so that we can manage the process and make sure that the quality control of the service that's being given to our buildings is high and that they're responding to the needs of our buildings. And the only way that I can do that is to make sure that I'm in contact with the building and with the accelerator to make sure our buildings get done. My goal is to have all 100% participation so that we have all 50 buildings in line and we can get that done. I have a list of the buildings and some data that I'm working with them to update around the buildings to get them started. So call me directly. I'm Vincent Morgan. My number is 646-476-3394, extension 202. Again, it's 646-476-3394, extension 202. Signe, Les, you have my information. You can put people in contact with me. And my email address is vmorgan@westharlemdc.org. And again, I need your help. We need to make sure that all 50 of these buildings are aware. I know Anita is there. Anita, your building's on the list. I got free resources for you. I was planning on calling you tomorrow and telling you about this, but we need to make sure that every building like Anita's is on this list that we have 100% participation. I rattled that off very quickly. I can take a couple of questions if anybody has anything. If not, thank you.
Well, I'll open it up for questions, but just so you know, I have a MailChimp list that has a lot of HDFC people on there from our past experience with workshops we've done and things. So let's
Yeah.
make sure I can send something out if you want to send me a little recap of what you just explained. Maybe I can forward that along on my MailChimp list.
So I'm working with them right now, and I'm waiting for their updated spec sheet on all of this. I should have it by the end of the week, and I'm going to put something together, and I'm going to share it with you. That'll be easily sort of sent out to your group. And then I'm doing some door knocking to make sure that we meet up with buildings. But I got to tell you, this is one of those things where I keep on talking about this local law 97 compliance, and people are busy. They have jobs and lives. It becomes one of those things that gets, you wait because you think you have time, and then it ends up being the end. And what's going to happen is that there already such a shortage of these retro commissioning agents that they're charging exorbitant fees to actually get it done. So the smart thing to do is get in early and get the free resources before they get gobbled up by everybody else. So I want to make sure the Community Board 9 buildings are in front of the line so we get the resource before everybody else takes it.
Cool. Are there any questions for Vince or HDFC folks on the line that are confused about what he's saying? Doesn't sound like it. Going once.
Reach out, and if anybody has any questions that come up, just feel free to reach out, and we'll just do it one-on-one.
I did hear from someone a question, Vince. So some people, and I'm sure this is a question you get a lot, but a lot of people are interested in, how do you get into an HDFC? How do you buy into it? What kind of, banks would actually give a loan for it and that kind of thing? Are there workshops? Are there things like that can be taken?
Yes, there are HDFC units that come available. But HDFCs, like every other segment of affordable housing, is getting harder and harder to come by in New York City. So the demand for HDFCs has gotten, very high. And, I'll say this, we live in New York City where everybody hears about HDFCs, just like they hear about, rent stabilization or, rent controlled buildings. And, everybody's an expert on them because they've heard about it, but they don't really know the details of it. It's a really important and I think beautiful part of the fiber and the fabric of New York City. And it's really buildings that pulled themselves together and pulled themselves up during some hard years in the 80s and 90s and really kept it together. So, they're very desirable. They're 2 and 3 generations in some buildings of people that have like lived and grown up in these buildings. And I just think that most of the buildings that I've visited, I just meet this beautiful mosaic of New Yorkers that unfortunately it's getting harder and harder for them to stay in the city. So I've become very passionate about HDFCs and what they represent in a city that's filled with $5,000 a month apartments, right? So finding an HDFC is just like finding any other apartment. You should find a real estate agent that is working directly with buildings and has some knowledge about the process of applying for an HDFC co-op, because there are different income restrictions that most buildings will have for who can actually purchase the units because of the classification of HDFC and the affordability aspect of the segment. So one, finding a real estate agent that specializes in this, and they typically have their finger on the pulse of what's available. And then 2, New York City has a Home Connect, website that sometimes has a few that are on there. I occasionally get listings that are off market, and we will generally put them up on a listing section on our website. I don't have any currently, but you can check back there on our website at WHDC. The westharlemdc.org. But, it takes a little bit of legwork to find them. And then it takes a little bit of legwork to put the documentation together once you get that done. Yes, there are lenders that will do a mortgage for an HDFC co-op, but there are some differences to that. And usually they're built in around the income restriction and guidelines of that. But a broker who knows this marketplace should do it. So I would just Google, HDFC available for sale rentals and see if there are any listings that pop up on Street Easy or whatever. Street Easy typically will have in their write-ups on available units for sale, it will have a section in the description that says this is an HDFC building. So you can start out by looking there.
Well, there we go. There's our workshop on how to get into the HDFC. Thank you, Vince.
Sure.
With that said, in final call for any questions, we can't say HDFC without saying Miss April Tyler in the same sentence.
You cannot.
As you all
April
know,
was an inspiration, and she is, one of the catalysts in making sure that, I'm where I am. She started out, the whole conversation about HDFCs and protecting them, and she's sorely missed.
That's right. That's right. So if anybody's on the line who doesn't know, April was our fearless leader for many years. She and I were co-chairs before Liz was my co-chair, and she was in the housing world for 30 some years. Was one of those sweat equity folks that started an HDFC on her block and made it into a gem. And sweat equity and the last bastion of a low-income affordable housing ownership is how
and almost 4 generations in her building of her family.
Yep.
So she's a perfect representative of that.
Yep, that's right. All right, thank you, Vince.
Thank you.
Next we have Cameron from We Act for Environmental Justice. Hi, Cameron.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Pretty good.
Is there any way you can enable screen sharing? I have like a little bit of a presentation.
Yep, hold on one second.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, try now, Cameron.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. So, can everybody see that all right?
Yes, I gotta go back. Page here. Now we can see it.
Awesome. So, yeah, just to introduce myself, I'm Cameron. I'm one of the Cecil Corbin Mark fellows at We Act for Environmental Justice. We're a local environmental justice organization. I'm also a medical student at Columbia. I'm taking a couple years off to focus on this work for a little bit, but I'm here tonight to talk to you all about the Community Land Act and how it's a housing, health, and environmental justice opportunity for our community, in the vein of talking about affordability in the city. So I know one thing New York does is it produces a lot of maps, and so just to talk through a couple of these, we're all probably familiar in this room with how our community and Northern Manhattan more broadly are some of the most economically vulnerable and most ecologically and environmentally vulnerable neighborhoods in the city. And we can see this replicated again and again across all sorts of strata. In terms of inflation adjusted rent, we are some of the most vulnerable residents of the city. In terms of eviction filing rate, it's us and Bronx are some of the most vulnerable communities. And then in terms of heat vulnerability, so in terms of the lack of green space in Northern Manhattan and Harlem, we are some of the hardest hit communities in terms of our vulnerability to extreme weather events, heat in particular. And these aren't things that are sort of out of the atmosphere. These are things that are specifically related to, I would say, community control. One of the reasons that we have sort of the built environment that we do, one of the reasons that we have sort of the fragility of residency that we do as, a largely tenant community, is that we don't have, that much of a say in what things are actually built in our neighborhoods. So when the community asks for parks, we get sewage treatment plants. When the community asks for housing, we get, luxury developments, and all of these things contribute to our displacement and negatively impact our health. So, I'm going to talk tonight about one of the things, there's numerous solutions to this, but I'm going to talk tonight and focus on, community land trusts. So if you're not familiar with this concept, it actually has its origins in the middle of the civil rights movement. This was 1969. That New Communities Inc. was the first community land trust. It was in Albany, Georgia, and it was a community of African Americans who came together because they were being, they lacked the ability to access land that was owned by white landowners in the state. And so they came together, pooled their resources collectively, and used that to create, a community land trust where they sort of owned the land in common and were able to determine collectively what they wanted to use that land for. And that actually persists to this day. That was the first community land trust. To talk a little bit about the model of the community land trust, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. But in general, the model is that the community collectively owns the land, but individuals or organizations can own the buildings that are built on top of the land. And the way that you do this is by having the community-owned land, and then they rent out the land in 99-year ground leases that have certain agreements that the person who is constructing property on top of that ground lease has to abide by in order to maintain control of that property. In part, so that split ownership model, so it actually enables the person who, owns the housing or whatever you decide to build on that land to, make improvements and continue to benefit from some of the benefits of ownership. But in the agreements of the ground lease, there are generally commitments to maintaining affordability with the community land trust, so that land is maintained permanently affordable for low-income folks in that community. So, in general, community land trusts deal with housing models. So, you can apply this same principle to a number of different housing designs. So you can use it for single-family homes, you can use it for limited equity housing cooperatives, mutual housing associations, or multifamily rentals. So it's not necessarily exclusive to like one specific design: co-ops, non-co-ops, rentals versus non-rentals. But I think it's also important to note, as an environmental justice organization, that there's uses beyond housing and in addition to housing that you can use some of this land for. So if you wanted to say, develop more urban agriculture, if you see that your community is in need of more small businesses, more open or green spaces, or more, community spaces, like, maybe a community center or an art studio or a theater or something like that, you can use this land for that, as long as you're abiding by some of the general principles of maintaining, permanent affordability for the community. And so, in general, the structure of the community land trust maintains this community control, sort of like we talked about a little bit earlier, by, having a tripartite board. So that's composed one part of residents of the buildings that are on that CLT land, one part that's, community members. So that would be, groups like this, like the, like CB9, who are living in maybe the surrounding area. And, maybe a third of it would be stakeholders who either represent the public interest or bringing in, community development expertise. So like housing folks, business owners, folks who, have an interest or a stake in that community. And so through this tripartite board, you're ensuring that like all of the folks who have an interest in the long-term affordability and the livability of this community are given a say, which is, not necessarily always the case when you're, dealing with real estate or property development in New York. So this is, an out-of-date list. So this is a map of some of the existing community land trusts in New York City alone. We have some of, we have a nascent community land trust movement, but it's growing quickly. So even this map, doesn't picture the 4 community land trusts that we have in our area. So, it has Northern Manhattan on there, but it doesn't have Central Harlem or West Harlem CLT. And, you can see that East Harlem actually has acquired land and is currently, redeveloping some of the land and some of the buildings that it's acquired. So the thing that I want to talk to you all specifically about is the Community Land Act. So essentially what this act is, it's a package of bills that's going before the New York City Council, over in this upcoming legislative session. So it composes 4 things. So it's the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, Public Land for the Public Good, the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Resolution. So that's a resolution that's going to New York State. And then the abolition and replacement of the New York City tax lien sale. So just to get into what the trajectory of this was in 2023. So in 2023, about 2/3 of city council members co-sponsored the Community Opportunity Act and Public Land for the Public Good, and 2/3 have also committed to not reauthorize the tax lien sale. So this has, nearly super majority support for most of the tenets of this Community Land Act, and it's been endorsed by numerous communities. Polling has shown that, a majority of voters have supported some of the core tenets of the Community Land Act, including, prioritizing not-for-profit developers for public land acquisition and supporting nonprofits and CLTs to build more housing. Specifically for the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, so what this does really quickly is it gives qualified community land trusts and nonprofits the right to make sort of the first offer on multifamily units when the landlord decides to sell. So if a landlord has a building that they own and they decide to sell it, it gives nonprofits the ability to sort of get in line ahead of for-profit developers when a landlord decides to sell. It doesn't relinquish the right of for-profit developers to make an offer. It just says that if no nonprofit is interested, then the landlord is then allowed to go throughout the process to find like a for-profit developer. And if a nonprofit developer makes an offer and the landlord is like, no, I'm not interested in that offer, essentially they're able to then continue on the process of seeking a different developer. This legislation is already in place in other cities across the country, San Francisco, DC, and it's actually preserved. These are cities that are notoriously unaffordable and would be even more so, if this didn't actually preserve some of the affordable homes that exist in those communities. So there's a bunch of different financing tools. I'm sure that you are all maybe familiar with a lot of these different financing tools that you can use to fund some of that acquisition for nonprofits to be able to make those competitive offers. But it's just sort of wanted to mention that these are resources that nonprofits can tap when they want to make offers for land that is being sold off. And one example is actually the East New York Community Land Trust, which just, I think about a month ago, successfully acquired, I think it was a 21 unit building, and is currently working with tenants to convert the building into permanently affordable tenant controlled housing. The second thing that I wanted to chat is public land for the public good. And to say it simply, it essentially does the same thing as the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, except just for the city. So as some of you might know, the city is the largest landowner in New York City is New York City itself. And the vast majority of the land that the city decides to dispose of goes to for-profit developers, exacerbating gentrification and displacement. And so what this does is gives nonprofits essentially that same ability to make the first offer to the city, and if the city decides that they if they don't accept that offer, or if it's not appropriate, then they're able to go through the process of allowing for-profit developers to bid on the land. But that essentially allows this public land that is already concentrated in low-income neighborhoods, instead of being given for pennies on the dollar to for-profit developers who are making lowball offers that are getting accepted, it allows nonprofits to sort of step in and take advantage of that city-owned land as it's being distributed to the community. Just to mention that our neighborhood is these are statistics that, you know, reflect numerous neighborhoods. Our neighborhood actually would sit right in between Brownsville and East Harlem in terms of the percentage of homes on public land that are not affordable to median income families. And again, there's another example. This is actually from the Bronx from like a sister organization of ours, South Bronx Unite, which was able to acquire an abandoned city-owned Lincoln Detox Center and transformed it and is currently in the process of transforming it into a center for health, education, and arts through taking advantage of this process through a community land trust of their own. Third thing, and I'll speed up because I don't want to take up too much time, is the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. Essentially, a very similar concept, but for instead of nonprofits and communities, it gives tenants in these buildings the ability to make the first offer when their building goes on sale. So tenants would be right up there at the front of the line with community nonprofit. And so, you know, it would give essentially, you know, I can share this full presentation with you all afterwards if you're interested, but it sort of just lays out this stepwise process via which when the owner declares their intention to sell, gives the tenants the ability to respond, form a tenant union, make an offer, and then secure financing for that offer ultimately. And those same, you know, financing options for community opportunity to purchase would also apply for tenants who are interested in making an offer to buy the building of their landlord. Final thing is something you probably are already extremely familiar with, is the tax lien sale. And so essentially this tax lien sale is a mechanism that was in place up to 2022 that New York City was put in place by, oh my goodness, by Giuliani, I believe, or correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it essentially was a mechanism that New York City used to collect unpaid property taxes, sewer, water charges, and it essentially allowed the city to sell those debts to a private debt collector. Those debt collectors were notoriously predatory and would charge, you know, the owners of the property high fees, penalties, driving the homeowner into distress and leading to, like, you know, sort of an epidemic of abandoned buildings or distressed properties. It actually generated an extremely small amount of revenue proportional to the amount of property taxes that the city was collecting overall, but it was disproportionately impacting Black and brown homeowners and making, you know, foreclosures extremely common in Black and brown neighborhoods. So it was stopped. It wasn't reauthorized in 2022. The city council has yet to permanently abolish it or to approve a program to replace the sale. So essentially what this legislation would do, and it's not currently finally written yet, is that it would replace this tax lien sale with a series of sort of 5 different off-ramps that the city can take when they see that, you know, a property owner is in distress or in default for some of the city-owned debts that they have. So it would be able to, you know, set up payment plans, allow the city to forgive the debt entirely, allow the city to transfer the land to a community land trust in exchange for debt forgiveness, while the property owner is still given the ability to keep the title to the building, and then, you know, gives additional options as, you know, preserving affordable housing, but then also just, you know, for properties where none of those options are you know, appropriate, it would allow foreclosure and sale of the building itself. So that's the Community Land Act. I'm sorry, might have talked a little bit fast, but, you know, it's these four individual bills. So Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, Public Land for the Public Good, Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Resolution, which would be on a statewide level, and then abolishing and replacing the New York City tax lien sale. So my ask to you, as the Housing Committee of Community Board 9, would be to adopt a resolution in support of the Community Land Act. And I think I've already sent out to Liz and Signe sort of like a draft or template resolution that you could use to work off of if you were, you know, interested in going in that direction, and, you know, to join some of the other community boards that are adopting these resolutions and indicating to the city council that this is something that our community supports. Yeah, and so thank you so much. I'm happy to take any questions as well.
Thank you, Cameron. Very informative. So we will open up to questions and discussion as to, you know, if this is something that we want to write a resolution on. Welcome. Hello. Hi, how are you? You're for housing, land use and zoning, right?
Huh?
Are you here for housing, land use and zoning? We have another meeting on education, so just wanted to make sure. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And Siggy, Liz, hi. I got on, I think, while Cameron was presenting.
Here.
Hey, Barry.
Hi, Barry.
Hey,
I don't think we have a quorum still, though.
No.
All right, so glad you got on, Barry. I am going to let Liz take the stage. She has some questions. And then if anybody else has questions, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, which should be under reactions. Or if you don't know how to do that, just turn your camera on and wave your hand like this.
Wave like just don't care.
That's right. All right,
Um,
Liz, questions.
so Cameron, thank you. That was a really well done and easy to follow presentation. So thank you for that. It was very well done. Visually concise. So I have a couple of questions. My first is, so who can start a CLT? Can any group of individuals start a CLT? And in your presentation, you noted that there is a West Harlem CLT, I think, already. So could another CLT in this community be created? Or is that the mechanism for CLTs in our community?
Yeah, so you know the Central and West Harlem and also the North Harlem CLTs are relatively new. They're still in the process of sort of recruiting members, locating properties that they might be interested in acquiring from the city, and developing some of their technical capacity. But essentially, the answer to your question is yes, anybody can create a CLT. For the purposes of some of these acts, there would be, some sort of qualification process that, the city would have to, go through to determine which CLTs would be eligible, whether they would need to be like registered nonprofits or some other, mechanism to verify that. But, CLTs are, any group of folks who have a shared interest in their community can undertake an agreement to keep their community affordable and while also continuing to revitalize it. If that
Are there mechanisms to protect who can, we have lots of bad actors in New York, right? We have nonprofits who are in disguise as good people and they're actually not. And they're here doing bad things, under the disguise of being a nonprofit and community oriented. So do you have has this happened? Is there any protection mechanisms of who can, I guess my concern is the creation of a CLT and people who are going, saying that they're here for the public good, but they're just doing what developers do, which is trying to take, and
What are the safeguards to
yeah,
make sure that?
Are there any?
Yeah, so CLTs as a concept are not innately protective, but what it does is it separates. I think that, let me see. So to answer your question, I feel like if you are a bad actor and you are interested in acquiring land under the guise of nonprofits for financial or nefarious purposes, I think that there are a lot more efficient ways to do that than to form a community land trust. You know, there's not necessarily an advantage that it would give you to have a community land trust, to bring in, you know, members of the community and to sign, essentially sign away your right to, like, you know, flip houses for large profit is, you know, one of the ways that these organizations are typically structured. So it would, you know, if you were, you know, a nonprofit or a corporation masquerading as a nonprofit, then there would be far more efficient ways to do that, and, you know, to gain sort of like, you know, some sort of advantage over other developers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I guess what brings to mind is, you know, nonprofits that are large institutions or schools, who they're not being nefarious, but they are accumulating land for their
For
more or
sure.
less their own. Yeah,
Right.
or religious groups. I can see that, you know, I assume there are religious groups that would be interested in doing this and taking land for their community, to be able to gain more access to land in the city.
Absolutely. You know, I think, you know, you don't, you know, Columbia is one example of like a, you know, a nonprofit. I mean, it's my school, you know, I think I can speak to it. But one example of a nonprofit that is, you know, one of the largest private landowners in the city, has more than $100 billion in or $100 million, sorry, in assets, and, you know, is for all intents and purposes operating as a corporation while still benefiting from nonprofit status. I think one of the advantages, or sort of the contrast between sort of that model and a CLT model, is that, you know, Columbia would not benefit additionally if it sort of gave up the right to sell its land as a profit, if it disassociated, you know, the buildings on the land from the ownership of the land, and if it, you know, essentially, instead of doing what it's doing right now, which is, you know, renting, you know, creating housing for students and a lot of market rate housing, if it, you know, voluntarily said, hey, we're going to, you know, rent this land at, you know, essentially, you know, 20% of AMI to like low income folks indefinitely. And we're going to legally bind ourselves to do that. So I think that CLT, you know, while CLTs can be structured as nonprofits, sort of the restrictions are voluntary, and they are, you know, sort of cumulative on like what on the restrictions that nonprofit status already confers. So that would, you know, essentially be a nonprofit like voluntarily saying like, hey, not only am I not going to like take profit, but I'm going to, you know, involve the community in this at every stage, and not, you know, not even extract profit from like the sale of this land, if that resonates at all. But, you know, I'm happy to like chat more like offline. You know, I think there's a lot of resources that I wasn't able to bring, but, you know, I hear your question. I'm trying to see if I'm answering that appropriately.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're doing a good job. I think that is my main concern, is who is gonna form a community land trust, and if there's any oversight by the government in terms of how they're created. But I don't want to hog up all the questions, so I don't know if there's anyone else on the committee here that has a question. But Barry, yeah, Barry has his hand raised, and I'm sure Barry has good questions.
Well, I apologize. It may have been answered during the presentation. I missed it. But does your plan or the series of bills involve different treatment for different types of properties? So, for example, the city has weaponized municipal debt to try to get rid of HDFCs a lot in our district, and I think that we're very vested in keeping HDFCs, and we wouldn't want to see them, transferred to become rental housing, or even, have a lot of their equity taken by a land trust, because there's a whole history behind that building. So I know some proposals have talked about different policies for single-family homes or owner-occupied homes versus HDFCs versus, 4-unit plus rentals. I didn't know if there were any nuances there.
For sure. And just to clarify, are you talking specifically about the tax lien sale abolition and replacement, or?
Well, the 5 alternative paths instead of the tax lien sale that you referenced in your presentation.
Yeah, so to that, that's still the legislation is still like actively being written, and actively being conceived. So I think everything that I could say would be like, might change tomorrow. But I think that the interest is in not, the goal is not to weaponize the tax liens to, transfer ownership away from low income communities or communities of color, into someone else's hands. Essentially, the goal would be to like ensure the preservation of those, of those communities and of those properties in the hands of some of their owners, which are, predominantly and disproportionately low income and communities of color, if that makes, that.
It does make sense. The only like word of warning and the motivation behind my question is we've seen HPD and the city pick up tools that were not built to do things and weaponize them against HDFCs. For example, the alternative enforcement program, which was meant to allow the city to make repairs and then bill horrible landlords, was never envisioned to be used on HDFCs. We've seen HPD weaponize that to try to push an HDFC, into foreclosure. And so we're always just mindful, like, yes, we have our goals, but what are possible other consequences of our actions? Because someone without our intentions may pick up the same tool that we're building.
100%. And I guess to that, I think I would say, like, because this bill, and so this would be the tax lien sale replacement would be a city bill that's like, currently still in development. The language is not finalized yet. And I think that for me, I'm not on the community board, but I would see that as an opportunity to like maybe include that in, a potential resolution, saying like, hey, supportive of the abolition of tax liens, are aware of how they've been weaponized against communities of color, but also want to caution that, deployment of, some of whatever alternative pathways are conceived, ensuring that they, aren't, weaponized to remove equity from these communities in the same way that the tax lien sale historically has been. So I think that's definitely like something that, this community board, I think could absolutely include in whatever, if you decided to adopt a resolution, whatever resolution you would decide to adopt.
Yeah.
And
Appreciate that.
I'll share on the screen what you shared, Cameron, if I can find it on my share screen. Yeah. Problem is finding it on Zoom to share.
Are you looking for the resolution? Or
1 second.
Yeah, go ahead.
There it is. Okay. So this is the resolution text that you have shared as a starting point. So we'll have to take a good gander at this. Are there any more questions for Cameron?
I have a question.
Yeah. go ahead.
It's a very practical question. How many votes do you have in the council right now on the bills that you mentioned, and how many do you need to get this passed?
Oh, yeah, and who is the council member supporting the bill or introducing the bill?
Not sure. Thank you.
Sorry, I got I got sirens in my background. But yeah, for the so there's 3 sort of pieces of legislation. So there's public land for the public good. So yeah, so the Community Land Act is not, you know, sort of one bill. So there's 3 independent pieces of legislation. The prime
All
sponsor, yeah, of the sort of the tenant or the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act resolution is, I think it's sponsored by the public advocate, and I think Tiffany Caban is also
Yes.
21 co-sponsors for the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act. I believe it's Carlina Rivera, and I think there were 32 co-sponsors sort of last time I checked, and then I think 33 co-sponsors for the actually I think I switched it. I think it was Public Land for Public Good. Public Land for Public Good, that's Lincoln Rustler, and I think it's 33 co-sponsors so far, I think. And that's, you know, sort of trying to get back up to comparable levels this session that we were at last session.
Go ahead.
How many votes do you need in order to get it passed? To get each one of those parts of the legislation passed?
For,
Do you know?
not off the top of my head.
Great.
But, you know, I think that's something that I can, you know, like in terms of strategy, like I can reach back out to the members and get back to you with, like, you know, some of our specific target numbers that we're looking for. And I'm sorry, who asked that question?
I'm Andres Orwell. I'm a longtime attendee of the HLU's meetings at MCB9.
Got it. Yeah, if you wanna share your contact information or anything, then I can reach back out to some of the lead organizers, and I can see if what information they'd be willing to share, and I can get back to you with that.
See you email in the chat.
Sure.
I'll send
Do you want me to put your email in there?
Yes, you can. Thank you.
Lois, did you have, I see you have in the chat here, a couple things.
So I'm reading the number one, where can the copies of these acts be found? I think some of those I've sent over to Signe and Liz, but I can drop links in the chat. I can also send out, you know, information afterwards. The other question, how can one do a resolution on a non-existent bill or a bill that is in the works? So, you know, I think for the tax lien sale abolition, I think that, you know, it's not necessary for you to, like, for the committee or for the community board to specifically reference a bill, as much as it would be possible for the community board to reference, like, the principles. I think in some of the draft legislation or the draft resolution, it sort of talks about, you know, discontinuing the city's tax lien sale and building, you know, a more just and inclusive city overall. So I think that, you know, language to that effect would be able to address, you know, sort of the position of the community board without making reference to, like, you know, legislation that has yet to be released, if that answers the question.
Not quite. I'm
Yeah,
finding over time the devil is in the details. Now we can come up with, we can gaslight it and make it sound good, but once you read what's in the bill, what is said and what is in writing that is enacted into law aren't always the same. So my question is, how do you expect the planning board, the community board, to write a resolution in favor of a bill that's in the works without knowing the details, based upon high level overview and not the details? It's the details that cripples our community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, for the purpose of,
Yeah.
you know, sort of the this presentation. I think there was like a lot of content to cover in not a huge amount of time, but I think that I'm happy to, if there's ever, sort of wanted to do a deeper dive on like one of these bills specifically, or like one of these resolutions, like I would be happy to come back and like do, a little bit more of like a weedsy discussion. So I think that, I would be happy to talk, in more depth about that. And then I think, I think there's also an opportunity for the community board, to influence some of the direction of this legislative drafting by coming out with like clear principles in the resolution that you all, could potentially decide to write. By saying like, hey, these are the things that like we would support, and these are the things that we would not support. So like we would support abolishing like a tax lien sale. We would not support a mechanism that would displace folks from their existing HDFCs. So I think laying out some of those criteria, I think, is something that would be really, I would say, like incredibly useful at this stage, because for the fact that the resolution is, or some of the legislation is still being written.
Any other questions for Cameron?
I see Sean's name on this one.
I do see, yep. So, again,
Oh,
if you
Tanya,
can put,
It wasn't
Yeah.
a question. Hey, Cameron, how you doing?
how's it going?
No, I just wanted to say thank you. I thought that was a great presentation and it's really exciting. So not really a question, just a comment.
I appreciate it.
see Gail on there. Yeah. So that's some of the folks that have sponsored it. There's quite a few here.
What are the expectations on timing of this? I see. Oh yeah, this one has a later agenda time date. What are the expectations on timing? You're looking for a letter of support, but they're still writing the text, and this is probably a lot for us to read through.
For sure. I don't think that, that's a similar question that I think I can definitely get back to the lead organizers about, whether there's like, a specific, I think it's the thing that's sort of really, I think this is like kind of a moving target, and that like, depending on some of the negotiations that are happening for the budget at the state level, could also potentially impact, what sort of progress is being made at the city with some of like our city housing affordability legislation. But I think, for this committee, if they're like, I don't think there's necessarily an expectation that you would need to like have something for the, the next executive session meeting. But I think that, I think is actually, maybe this is a better opportunity for me to ask a question, is when dealing with like a new resolution, sort of what is the timing that this committee sort of like typically takes to like, look at a resolution, do the research, and determine whether this is something that they do or don't want to move forward on?
That's a good question. It depends on the issue, and it depends on the details, right? I would say, I mean, it looks like this reso includes a couple of different, 4 different topics here. So, that's something that we need to dive into. We are very familiar with, text being changed over time and having to really dig into the details. As Lois says, devil is in the details. As we go through our, City of Yes text amendments, we know clearly that, devil is in the details. So, time frame as far as our side goes, we would need probably at least a couple of months to review. That's getting us into our summer session, and then fall is in September. So, is there, anything pressing on the side of, it going through or not. If not, then we're looking at fall at this point.
And some of us might not even get reappointed. But in addition to that, I love this resolution for the most obvious reason is that the status quo is not helping us at all, right? Like you have developments all over Harlem, people taking over land right and left. And we don't have any community processes where people can actually get land, you know, for any reason, even to plant a tree, you know? So this is hopeful. I mean, to me, I mean, I don't know what is. I mean, I can see really awful things too, people getting together and planning to buy something and they have alternative reasons to do it, you know?
It's part of our job to see what all the possible outcomes could be. I think Barry
Exactly.
mentioned that, but.
So the conversation needs to be a little longer, yeah. You should come back, something like that.
Yeah, Cameron, keep coming back and keep
I posted, yeah.
keep the conversation.
I mean, I trust we act more than I trust most of the people telling us things and then other plans are set in stone and then we don't have a say, you know? Or they tell us we're gonna put this in Harlem, and then they never come back, or they say, we hear you, and they don't, you know? So I appreciate
We
that.
get a lot of lip service up here, don't we?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you, Cameron.
for sure.
Thank you for bringing it to us.
I'd be happy to come back. I think the last thing that I wanted to share super quickly is that there is a, sorry about that.
Oh, yeah. I asked you to make sure you talk about this. A lot of us knew Cecil and knew him personally, and we miss him dearly. So tell us more. When is this?
Yeah, so we're having a street naming ceremony for Cecil Corbin Mark. You know, long time sort of environmental justice advocate, legend in this community. It's going to be on April 20th. It's going to be on the intersection of Convent and West 143rd Street from 11 a.m. to noon.
Saturday.
Yeah, that's Saturday. And then following that, there's going to be a reception. I think it's at Harlem Burger Company, up on, I want to say that's Amsterdam and like 141st Street, but I can share the exact details. There's let me actually just drop the link in the chat right now with all the details on the event. I definitely be happy for anybody to come out.
Raise that.
And I'm definitely, want to volunteer. Like I'd be happy to come back if folks have, additional questions on any of the tenets of, or any of the legislation that I mentioned, any of the policies, if they just want to, if you decide to do something different, break it up into different resolutions, I'd be happy.
It's okay. Okay, thank you, Cameron.
For sure.
Oh, Pat, you have a question?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. Cameron, it's nice to meet you. I was so honored when I heard that you were one of the Cecil Corbin Mark Fellows. Some of you may know, I know Barry definitely knows, that I learned through our community service work that Cecil and I were related. We're cousins, and that was it was funny how that happened, but it was an honor to know him, and I had always felt like I was so proud of him and everything that he was doing. So the fact that this street naming is coming up is a joy to me. I've already registered, and I've also shared information with other members of our family. Cecil and I are, I guess you could say, descendants of the Burnham Williams family, which has had a lot of history, not only in the United States, but also we have a legacy in Barbados that goes back to the 1700s. And I'm proud to know that one of our relatives is going to be honored in this way. So I just wanted to say it's nice to meet you, and I wish you the best in all that you do and all your future endeavors.
Absolutely, you too, and I'll see you on the 20th.
Yes, you definitely will, and there'll be other family members there as well.
You're right.
Awesome. Thanks, Cameron. We're gonna move along. All right, Anthony. A quick update if you can.
Yeah, it's just an announcement. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
hand out. Here's the board copies.
Oh, I just shared.
Oh.
Yeah. Just going back to the agenda.
What should I send? That's,
Oh, you can, and yeah,
In front of the
here,
owl.
I'll show you where, let me, do this again.
Should I just swear out that?
Yeah, you can see yourself on the screen there if you wanna, yeah, just stand right there, you're good.
Just handing out some materials. Hi, everybody. I'm gonna get a close up. I used to be a co-chair of Landmarks and Parks for a community board, Swiss Community Board 9. It's nice to see many of you
I have one there.
and one for each.
Thank you.
Okay. So.
Welcome back, Anthony, glad to have you back.
Thank you. So I'm a community coordinator for Manhattan and the Bronx for the Civic Engagement Commission. So if you voted back in 2008, this is going to be weird. I'm going to be transitioning. If you
Okay, you
voted
can
back,
look towards the screen. Yeah.
okay. If you voted back in,
understand.
okay. Sorry if I had my back.
You're good.
So if you voted back in 2018, it was a measure on the ballot, the creation of this committee, this commission. So one of the principal roles of the Civic Engagement Commission is to promote civic participation. So that's like getting the vote strategies through Democracy NYC, community board workshops, trainings, which I'll make an announcement shortly. We also have a citywide participatory budgeting program. So right now, the city council, certain city council members run a participatory budgeting program, which is strictly for, capital expenses, brick and mortar, construction, renovation. The People's Money Program, it's not restricted by whether or not your city council member opts in. It's citywide, all 5 boroughs. If you're 11 or older, you get to decide how to spend a portion of the city budget. In this case, roughly $3.5 million. And last year was the first time we started the process. This year will be the second year, second cycle. So voting period starts May 1st, and lasts through June 12th. So I just want to make that announcement. I'll send the brochures in digital format to Yutha as well as the PDF, which I already sent over to Yutha. Second announcement very quickly is this month we are having a few introductory workshops that are being organized, sponsored by HPD. So if you're interested in an introductory workshop around affordable housing, the different types, the different programs HPD has. The second topic is about fair housing. So if you're interested in the ways, the Where We Live NYC initiative that HPD has, which is around rental, rental assistance subsidies, how different programs for preserving affordable housing and how they develop housing. So if you're interested in a quick primer on these topics and getting contact information from representatives of HPD, I encourage you to attend. Let me borrow that. So the first one, introduction to, was actually today, but there's another one on April 16th at 6:30 p.m. And for fair housing, there's one April 11th, so that's this Thursday at 12 p.m. And there will be another one April 18th at 6:30 p.m. And apart from that, I know time is of the essence, so if there are any questions or comments, but just wanted to make a quick announcement, and it's nice seeing.
Two things. Who are you and what is your email or your information?
Sure, my name is Anthony Carrion. I'm a community coordinator for Manhattan and the Bronx.
Yeah. So HPD has said that they don't do after evening meetings, right? So I don't know how they have the goal to say that they want to do events with the public.
Yeah, 6:30.
That is a
So
good catch.
they claim that they do, or they're claiming that they want to do outreach to the community, but we send them emails, we call them, they don't answer. The inspectors who come to check out buildings don't wanna see problems. My window has water gushing in every time it rains. every time an inspector comes, they refuse to believe it. They see the wet floors, they see the wet windows, and they refuse to believe it. They don't see how something like that can happen when my building is surrounded, the facade of my building has cracks so big, you can put a pen through it. And they don't answer, so I don't understand how HPD is able to have these events, but they don't come to a community board meeting. But you are in connection with them, so I hope you send that message across. Because they are not an agency that should be funded. Because I haven't met yet one person, a tenant, who has anything good to say about HPD. And I've been living here since 1993 in Harlem. That's my little bit. Sorry about that.
I could give you the HPD contacts if you're interested.
Or I have them all, they don't answer and they refuse to answer. That's the thing. But I'll send you the emails that I've sent, so maybe you can do something about it.
Sure, and at the training, you get the opportunity to ask questions and get their contact information, but if you want that, I could give that to you.
I can have anybody's contact. Do they answer? We had a lady from the mayor's office who came. She doesn't also answer emails. So people can give you information. People can give you their numbers and their email, but they don't answer their email. So what's the point?
I'll answer.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
What was the program that we were wanted to ask HPD about, the lending
The alternative enforcement?
lending program?
Oh, the lending program.
Yeah, we had questions and concerns as to how it's applied here.
It's the first time home buyers.
Yeah, that's-
Affordable,
Are you familiar with that at all?
No,
No, okay.
I mean, it's in their presentation, but they don't go deep into it, it's just like
Yeah.
overview.
We have questions and.
yeah, we
Sorry.
passed a resolution, I think earlier this year. Essentially not to promote those types of programs anymore, because the reality is, they are extremely difficult to get that money. And they promote a false sense of opportunity for people who really need it. I went through that process and there was no money, and other people on the community board, so we wrote a resolution to that effect. of
Either
not-
make
to-
it work
Yeah.
or
To not promote it.
don't do
Or,
it.
or when they have the first time home buyers money that, banks are charged this money because they did something wrong. And so the way that they give back to the community is that they have this pool of money, but that money is only good for certain zip codes, very, very specific, certain times of the year, but they promote these programs all across the city as this could benefit you, but it's a real bait and switch and leaves people who are really trying to find permanent housing solutions, in somewhat of a bind, because they think, oh, I qualify for this. People keep telling me I qualify for this, and then there really is no money there.
Could you send me that resolution?
Sure, yeah.
And I'll also give you, along with, was it Juan,
Yeah.
the HPD contacts as well.
You have that in the files?
Somewhere.
Probably January.
And since we're all mentioning our experiences with HPD.
Not that Anthony's with HPD.
Right.
More, but we need a moment,
I think
right?
it's important that you understand where this is coming from, right? So you don't think that, so HPD for, I think, what is it now, so 8 years ago, asked HDFCs in West Harlem to join a regulatory agreement on the premise that these regulatory agreements would help HPD ensure the success of HDFCs. My HDFC converted rather recently, about a decade ago, so we have a regulatory agreement. None of the regulatory power is enforced by HPD. Leaving my HDFC vulnerable to the perils that come with being a new co-op. And so I've spoken directly with the people at Asset Management, which is now without an assistant commissioner. Before, when there was an assistant commissioner, the response was the same, beginning in 2014. So, HPD You know, it may not be the place to start.
HPD needs another letter so it can be a real 4-letter word.
But Mr. Carrion, I want you to understand something, and you are here, and we value that, and I appreciate it, okay? And I'm able to tell you that.
I don't represent HPD, but.
I know. So I'm telling you, I overpeat. So you are here. We appreciate that. They should be here, but they refuse to. Buildings are supposed to be, the facade of buildings are supposed to be pointed every 5 to 7 years. My landlord refuses to point the facade because he'd rather pay you fines. What's $1,000 to a person who's making millions of dollars? You know what I mean?
The cost of doing business.
And Sean Abreu has tried, and the Manhattan Board President, point person here has tried, and they haven't made this man do it. And he's been in this building since 2000. Since 2000, that's a lifetime for some business, right? So I appreciate you and thank you for your part. So I just want you to know where the frustration comes from, because they don't enforce anything. They are closer to the landlords than they are to the tenants. I'll leave it at that.
You're not the first person to tell me that. Queens Community Board 1 told me something similar about not being able to contact HPD. Is anybody else on? So I could relay at the very least your concerns.
I would love to meet them. Oh my God, that would be so fun.
I'll look for it. I'll look for it and I'll send you that resume that we did.
Sure.
You better send it if I can't find it. Okay. Okay, guys, we gotta keep moving here. Spotlight. There. So next on the agenda, we're now going into new business discussions. So we have a couple of things on here. So first, I'll share my screen again.
I think Ilana's online now. I know it doesn't count for quorum.
Doesn't count for quorum, but hi, Ilana, how are you?
Hi, sorry for the last minute. I couldn't make it. I'm sorry.
It's okay. We sadly don't have a quorum, but not your fault. It happens. All right, so as we've been discussing, City of Yes zoning text amendments and all sorts of City of Yes proposals and the buzzword of affordable housing, right? It just comes to the point where I want to open up the discussion about what affordable housing means versus equitable housing. Affordable housing is often tied to what we call AMI, area median income, which includes, as we know, parts of Westchester, parts of Yonkers, comparing them to, our areas. And a lot of our neighborhoods that don't have the kind of wealth, the AMIs drive up the prices and drive up the rent, differently than what our actual zip code might be, right? So I'm opening up a discussion and asking you all to start thinking about how we can, talk about this topic and take affordable housing and really think of it in equitable housing as well, right? And maybe there's a way we can write some sort of open letter or a letter of, a reso of some, I don't know what this is going to be yet, but it feels like this is something that we need to bring to the forefront. And I imagine other community boards, especially in our neighborhoods, have similar concerns, and it's all coming to a head, it feels like. So I know in the current zoning for housing opportunity. There's been a lot of talk about AMI, and Audrey and Jose, I know you guys are on the line, and I know you want to meet with us and chat with us more about our thoughts on the current text amendments coming our way before they get officially, again, you know, a huge amount of text amendments that we process and have to regurgitate and put a reso together. So the conversation is being had at some level with the ZHO, zoning for housing opportunity. But I wanted to open the discussion tonight, and I'm gonna shut up and let folks talk on this. I feel there needs to be something to address this on our side, right? So thoughts? Yes, Juan.
According to MIT, living wage calculator, a single person with no children needs to make at least $33 an hour to live in New York City. $33 an hour. What is the minimum wage now? Something like 15?
Is it 16 now?
It's in the teens.
Yeah. So, paraprofessionals in a New York City public school make less than $30,000 a year. They make $18.50 an hour, and they work full days. So that's just an example.
Yeah.
So you're saying, the relationship of AMI and housing equity?
Yeah, I mean, bringing up the AMI is a perfect example of why affordable housing on the AMI scale doesn't make equitable housing for our neighborhood. It's not affordable, as we are, the famous, what should, you know, one of the phrases that Vic says all the time, that we say all the time, that should be in there is affordable to whom? So is it a narrative we want to put out there into the world and get the other community boards together and maybe talk about how we form this thought together? And, you know, that I would say 10 has similar concerns, 12 has similar concerns. We have these concerns, others probably that we don't know as well.
Don't remember the history very well. Maybe some other people can know how the AMI, including Westchester and, you know, Tarrytown was came to be, because it must have been for a
How
reason.
it came to be included.
And now it's a
in the
tradition that we don't need to keep. Or we can revisit.
I don't know what's possible yet. I don't know, you know, how elected officials would respond. Barry, thoughts?
Yeah. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I was just looking for the mute button. I think this is a valuable discussion, but I don't think we should get too hung up on AMI itself. AMI is largely out of our control in that it's a federal issue, and it and you know, it's effectively what it is, and maybe they'll change the definition so that it makes more sense. But I think in terms of what we can have an impact on is defining and understanding what makes sense to our community in relationship to AMI. So I believe that our community district's median income is like 40% of the federal AMI for the New York City metropolitan area.
Mm-hmm.
And we will, you know, there's another measure for rents called the small area fair market rent that HUD produces that I don't think, you know, we would like either. The HUD definition of this, which is used, I think, in Section 8 vouchers to calculate how much HUD will pay, has, you know, the rent for fair market rent for a studio in 10027 as $2,050 and in 10031 is $2,180. And for a 2-bedroom, those numbers are $2,370 and $2,520. So on the one hand, those numbers are well below market rate. Like if you've ever encountered a destabilized unit in those zip codes, they're charging a lot more than that. But they're also significantly above, A, many times what the regulated rent on the unit is, and B, also above what someone earning our real area median income of 40% of federal median income can afford.
Yeah.
So we have all of these imperfect definitions floating around. And I think that like we should define it maybe in terms of both like the raw numbers at the moment, but also, you know, like here is what the census says that our area median income is in our district. Here's what the federal median income is for the metropolitan district. Our income is this percentage of federal, and we're not going to consider anything above that, you know, quote unquote, affordable, or we're not going to consider anything above, you know, slightly higher than that or lower, because there's people have conversations about, well, my kid went to school, they've got a good job, they want to move back to the neighborhood. Communities play around with these definitions, but once we've like figured out the percentages that we like, we should record that, maybe pass a reso, and then like not have this discussion all the time. It's important. It's important to come up with a statement, but I feel like we can have this conversation over and over again every time there's a new development, and that can be repetitive without being illuminating.
Yeah, so it's about what is the narrative that we want to portray here, and backing that up with the data and the, you know, specific to our neighborhood and all of this. So that's the discussion that we really want to have. I mean, the AMI isn't just an easy example to show people, but you know. Got you. Anyone else have some thoughts? I know Tiffany, I think, offered to try and take a stab at, you know, starting a narrative or starting a document. And then getting the other community boards with us to discuss this, right? Stronger in numbers. Anthony.
I was gonna say, I thought the intention was to kind of devise a formula.
Mm-hmm.
So along with Barry was saying, like, if that's the approach you take, to give that also to other community boards, like we looked at the census, and then we looked at, you know, these other metrics, and then we came up with our medium, and then kind of have everybody sign on to that formula.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so I just wanted to put it out there. I think people need to think about it, regurgitate it probably, right? Miriam, you have thoughts?
Yes, hi. So I wear a double hat. I mean, I am a resident of Community Board 9, obviously not of the Housing Committee, but I'm working with Goddard Riverside as an organizer in working with many buildings in Community Board 9 and Community Board 7. And when you mention equitable, what do you define? I want to have more to say on what is equitable, because under the equitable, there needs to be some kind of change in our policy that leans more towards tenants, because, and I know there's a lot of housing going on, and there's a lot of housing laws, bills out there right now, but I was speaking with an organizer about this today, that there almost needs to be a change in policy right now, with just how the city operates, kind of on a city council level. I don't know, at Barry, you're better at this, but just the accountability of what you were saying before. And I don't know the gentleman who was speaking, but HPD, I mean, we deal with HPD. I mean, we're dealing with landlords in your district that are being fined like up to $1 million, upwards to $1 million. And the disparity in the quality of living of rent stabilized units versus market rate units, there's no equity. Do you know what I'm saying? There, even within people who are housed, there's a lack of equity when it comes to repairs, when it comes to standards. You know, the SROs, we have a ton of SROs in our district, as well as if you speak with Central Harlem and Community Board 7, and you know, these units, you know, their rents don't change, so the landlords don't make repairs. So when you say equitable housing, I urge us to not just look at AMI, which is what's going to be measured for people seeking units, but equity also includes people in units.
Yeah.
Oh,
Anita?
I thought using other metrics is a good idea, and I was trying to think of what other besides the census. And there is, because of NYC open data, there's some, and I'm looking up about housing developments, they track affordable housing production by building, affordable housing production by project, the affordable housing production map, look law 44, and low income housing tax credits. I don't know if there's, maybe these are not the numbers that we would like to track, but it would be interesting to look into what are the other numbers might be useful for us and that we could compare and contrast with other community boards.
Alternatives.
I mean, your rent should be a quarter of your income, right? I do not see who can make, if they're paying 2,500, that's $10,000 a month. That is insane. When I moved to this neighborhood, we used to go to City College, and 4 people would get an apartment for $1,000, 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms. And you have to put a lot of work into that, but it was feasible. But now it's impossible. I don't see how people make the rent every month. I mean, the amount of kids that you see in high schools who are transient, and they are American citizens, you know? The people who have been here 2 or 3 generations, it's scary.
Yeah. Okay, well, I don't want to dwell on this because we could go on, right? But I wanted to put it out there and let's start thinking about our narrative on what we consider to be affordable to us and equitable. I want to flip the script on what everybody's talking about with affordable, right? Affordable. Yeah, it's, you know, it's not affordable. So what's the other term we use? What's the other narrative that we use?
Yeah, the term is being misused.
That's how I see it.
And abused as a marker for something that cannot be questioned.
Yeah, oh, it's
Or that-
affordable. So
Something that is, right, something that is automatically, you know, given the moral stamp of approval.
Right.
And when it's become detached from its meaning.
Yeah. Well, all the ears listening to this on the call right now, and we have, you know, quite a few ears that are hearing this, so. And that said, so 451 Convent Avenue, we talked about running some sort of reso, kind of in advance, right? Do you want to explain where we have come from with 451 Convent, and then the fact that it's probably still in litigation now and it may become city, and talking about narrative and what we want to see happen there.
Yeah, well, my understanding is that 451 Convent Avenue, it is a, either a 10 to 15 foot wide row house, lot on Convent between 149 and 150th Street. The property is privately owned, and was, in such an utter state of disrepair, that, after various rounds of, litigation, with, the city and the homeowner, the city has, and I haven't walked by it recently.
It's gone.
It's gone.
It's black.
Has demolished the building. It is in a landmark district. And when you demolish a landmark, the city will take action to recoup some sort of fee based on the loss of the historic fabric. And I don't exactly know what will come of that property, but I think the reason why we should get involved is there is an empty lot next door. And when I see a building being torn down because there's an empty lot next door, I mean, I've just survived through that on 142nd Street. And I'm very skeptical of what's going on any side, and I think the community should get involved and write a resolution that says, we would like to see 100% affordable. That land, I mean, I don't, the land next door, I believe is for sale. I think there was a sign on it.
I did see a
Yeah.
sign there.
So the original plot of land that's empty, there's a sign that that's for sale, and now this other lot, Lord knows what's gonna happen, but we all know that those two lots are gonna be bought by the same entity. And I think it's in our interest, regardless of whether we're successful or not, to say, that we would like to see, that property be developed, as affordable housing, 100% affordable for us, for this community. And not
So who
the,
do we direct this to?
it's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question.
So currently,
I haven't looked.
it's still, the one that just came down is still owned by this woman, but I'm sure it's in litigation. The city's
Right.
trying to recoup money that, has gone lost. But the lot next door is for sale by whom? I don't know.
I don't know, I would need to look it up.
Yeah.
I haven't looked it up.
Sydney?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think the owner, and I don't know if it's the same owner, but I think years ago, maybe 2017 or 18, I think the owner had come because they wanted to build. It was like a very modern looking building, but then I think there were
Oh.
issues. Do you remember that? You were
vaguely
there.
I vaguely remember this. Was it that lot? Maybe it was. And they wanted to
I
build
think it was
something.
that lot because there's no
What's
other
the
lot, right?
number?
I think it was.
Barry,
What's
do
the
you remember
number?
that? Who else has been, it was like maybe
I-
5 years, 6 years.
On
ago.
Convent Avenue, I don't remember that.
I remember City
says-
College owned property on Convent.
Yeah, that was
Great
about adding an elevator shaft to the building, though. That wasn't a.
Store,
Isn't that,
housing, an HDFC?
Oh, are you talking about the Dance Theater of Harlem lot?
No.
No.
What's
used
the
to be a
number of the
house,
lot
but
again?
It's a
You
very
say-
narrow lot.
Yeah, it used to be it was a row house and it burned. And then they raised it and then they left it as a lot after that. And
Does
nobody
anyone have
ever.
the address?
Yeah, it's 451,
451.
we're looking.
no,
okay.
it's 449 is the empty lot.
Oh, 449, sorry, 449 is the empty lot next to 451.
And I'm in, Acris. And I see two names, I see Creative Lofts LLC.
It was,
And-
so it was in 2019.
Yeah.
They wanted, please find for your review and approval submission materials for a new revocable consent to construct, maintain, and use walled-in area in the east sidewalk of Convent Avenue. This was from DOT, though. Here, let me pull up the plans and can I share my screen?
Yeah, I think you can.
Yeah,
Okay, hold on. Boy, I do not remember this.
I vaguely remember a gentleman coming before us to do something on that lot.
This was
Yep.
the lot.
Yeah,
Yes, I remember this, yep, and now the building next door to it on the left, guys, is now down. So we've got 2 empty lots. Oh, yep, consent for creative lofts, here it is.
But why would the DOT, like, they wanted to take the sidewalk for a garden, like a stoop thing? But this doesn't look that modern.
No, it's contextual because it's in a historic district.
Right.
The modern weird thing is, sorry, I shouldn't say those two things together. I'll get fired from my modern job. Is, that's the corner of 150, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a building there next to it.
No, it's right there next to it, right? It's
Yeah.
149.
Oh, okay. You
The
know what
whack-
this was?
The triangular lot.
So DOT was involved because it was the sidewalk, and LPC requested that we give a portion of the sidewalk to the building so that it could be walled in with like a little cast iron fence and made to match the other townhouses that were on the street because it was an historic district. That was this context.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at old emails about it now. Well, at any rate, that lot is now for sale, so Creative Lofts.
But I think we can somewhat be impactful on the building that came down because the city will have a lien on the property because of the process of taking the standing building down. Landmarks has a stake because a historic building has come down. And I think in my mind, that's enough reason why we can insert ourselves in the process. And say that if the city, you know, is going to, I mean, I don't know how these things actually work, but if they have to resolve this situation, the property is gonna be sold. Barry, I don't know if you know how this goes. The city will sell the property and they'll take back what they paid, and I don't know what happens with the homeowner.
I'm sure they'll sell it to the highest bidder. It's possible. I don't know what happens to the homeowner in that situation, though. I don't know if they get like what's left of the money after the city takes its share, or whether that's usually taken away in penalties. I don't know.
Well, this homeowner is sort of notorious for doing this, right? This is not.
There's a whole backstory on here.
This homeowner has like severe mental health issues and is very, very wealthy, but is a hoarder and collects cans and does not maintain the properties that she owns or has inherited, and maybe lives out of her car. It's a weird, sad story.
Well, but the suspicion is that this is sort of a deliberate act, that the sort of allowing the property to fall into a state of such disrepair that the only option left is to have it demolished. So this, to your point about inserting yourself, right, this would be part of an argument, I think, right? Like, it's one thing for a building to fall into disrepair once owned by the same person. It's another thing when it continues to happen and say, if you look into the history of the past properties where this has happened, what has been the result? If there's been.
She owns other properties and we need to see what else might be in our district.
Oh,
That's a project I would love
We
to
can
have someone do.
definitely, yeah, I mean, that's not hard to do, Clayton, to look her name up on the city data. You can- Yeah,
Yeah. I
No,
think I put it in the
address.
list of things
The
to have
city
you look
data,
at.
you can look up by, by name.
data.
Yeah, open
Oh,
data,
okay.
yeah, open data, you can look up her name, if you want her name, I can probably pull that up quick.
Well, I sent them both articles about her so that they could.
I don't remember what her name is.
Yeah, yeah. Cause I would like, I know she owns some other buildings and I've heard that those are also in disrepair.
Yeah.
There's her name.
Yeah, I've heard that
Oh, yeah.
her other buildings are in the same place.
There was an article published about her in the Post.
There's been a few.
Yeah. Okay.
When the city first came down with a order to demolish it, she rallied and said, I've got And then I walk by it every day when I go to something. She got the put this article up and she said, I'm gonna do something about it, don't, you know, and all this. And then, of course, it never, it happened, it started, she hired a crew. And then in February, it was found that they were doing illegal things, and so in February, the city said, that's it, shut it down. And it went very fast from there and it got demolished.
Yeah. And from what I can tell from Acris, she does not have large amounts of loans on the building. So if the city demolishes the building and then sells it for whatever the highest price is, they take their money back. You know, if she's gonna get a portion of that back, it will be substantially, I assume, higher than any loans that may still be on it. There's not really anything showing. I can't tell if this has been paid. Doesn't say satisfaction of mortgage. Yeah, but that's not her.
I mean,
Okay.
the reason to think that this wasn't like deliberate demolition by neglect is because she would have made more money had she just sold it.
Yeah. Why
Like-
did she keep it? Yeah.
But can't we,
So
as
nothing
a
since
city,
2013.
act faster than that so we are not losing, I mean, especially a landmarks building?
Good question.
Well, I guess this resolution is probably mine to write, but if people can,
Put it on
Yeah.
the Google Drive, as we say, and, you know,
assist with the background information. I've read these articles about her.
yeah.
I haven't recently. All right, well, we should keep going. It's 8:31.
Yes, I know. I'm aware.
We have 15 minutes.
So, 129th, the fair share analysis, Barry, we wanted to have a discussion on that.
Yeah. Do you want to pull that up or do you want me to pull that up?
Yeah, I have it up somewhere. Hold on, let me grab it real quick. So yes, okay, I'm gonna share it, hold on. Okay.
So this is interesting because we never actually get a fair share analysis of a shelter proposed in our district. At least I've never seen one. And we're supposed to. So the city actually bothered to do a fair share analysis on the proposed URI shelter that we heard about last month or the month before on West 129th Street between Amsterdam and Convent. And while I don't think we should oppose that shelter, if you scroll down, there's a part where they talk about
Sorry, I'm plugging in my computer, so it's
Okay.
dying. Don't want it to die on us here, so. Okay, scrolling down now.
like, yeah, we know about it. We know about the project. I don't think we oppose the project. We haven't taken a stance on it yet, but scroll down. 6 locations, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, not the issue isn't really with URI. Can we keep scrolling? Operation, those things are interesting details for us, but that's not what I'm mostly looking at. It's about first of all, I don't think we got notified about the hearing about this contract. But we can keep scrolling down. Physical inspection, city's legal obligation. Actually, can you Control F and just search for the word mile?
What am I looking for?
Mile, M-I-L-E. I think that'll get us to where we need to be. Okay, yeah. So here's where they're getting into, should we put this in CB9?
Yeah, this is interesting. I found all this interesting.
Right. And I have not checked this, but there are a lot of shelters on Convent Avenue in that area. There is a shelter on 126th Street and Old Broadway, at least one. You know, and whether or not they're DHS shelters, I think is immaterial. And I also think that we should, so what I would like us to do, and there's no rush on it, is I would like us to write a letter and basically call out to them, I forgot about that. Like, what are they saying those numbers are?
The ones that are in highlights, grayish, are shelter locations. The others are family location. What that means?
Facility locations.
Oh,
Yeah.
facility. Oh, sorry, facility. I'm reading wrong.
Yeah, like, how are they picking and choosing which to count here? That seems insane if those are all facilities. And also, I think we should also put in statistics to this letter, like, let's talk about actual fair share. Let's talk about how many shelters our community district holds. And then let's like normalize that for the amount of land that our district occupies in the city. And let's look at that. Because Staten Island has fewer than 1% of the shelter beds in the city, period. That's not adjusted for anything. And they include these statistics in here somewhere. So my point is, like, I think that we should write a letter to them that outlines why we think they, like, what we think they actually should have looked at when they did their fair share analysis.
Clayton has a question, or
Is there publicly available data on this, or no?
Probably, but maybe. So not all shelters are DHS shelters.
Haven't we been told time and time again that they wouldn't give us this information, that it doesn't exist? Or they won't give it to us?
This was my first thought, Liz, was I'm seeing on this list the names of shelters that I thought were not
Right.
supposed to be shared.
Wait, where are
Yeah.
you seeing the shelters?
Okay, let me show you. Hold on.
The list on the screen, right?
It's before this. Hold on. Let me get back to it.
Yeah, because these are schools.
At the very top here. Right there.
Yeah. They don't do a great job, clearly, of keeping these safe or
It
private.
says private there, but obviously.
Meetings for work.
Maybe.
Yeah. But you know, if those are just DHS shelters, like, what about HPD shelters? What about yeah, anyway, my point is just that I think we should say like, here are the actual number of total shelters in our community district. Here's the percentage, like, here's that percentage out of the total. And here's like our percentage of the population out of the total and the land out of the total. And guess what? It's not a fair share. But because we are like people with fucking empathy, you keep coming here and doing this, and we are not opposing it. And we are going to get some good permanent low-income housing out of this. But stop. And it really pisses me off that HPD constantly tells our committee that they can't find any sites for affordable housing, but somehow DHS always seems to find sites for shelters. Like, can we just get the real estate team from DHS to switch to HPD? I mean, yeah. Anyway, so that's what I would like us to do. There's not a time, it's not strictly speaking time sensitive. Yeah. That's my 2 cents, but I thought it was very good of the Adams administration that they actually bothered to do a fair share analysis for a proposed shelter, which I have never seen Bloomberg or de Blasio administrations produce, even though they're supposed to under the charter. So good on Mayor Adams for at least doing that. DHS has actually been very like helpful, communicative, cooperative with this community board since Mayor Adams took office, which again, total 180 from de Blasio. But we're still like, this is not a fair share. Let's not be ridiculous.
And I think it's important to bring that up, right? Because this really matters to Mayor Adams. He brought this up yesterday at the community conversation that he had. Because essentially what happens is that you bus people in from these areas that do not have their fair share of shelters, such as Staten Island, and you end up conglomerating or accumulating people who require social services in parts of the city that are disproportionately Black, Latino, lower income. And these are the kinds of things that Mayor Adams talked about at length yesterday, and which seemed to matter to his administration. So I think in that letter that you want to write, it is important to mention the racial and the economic consequences of this for Harlem. Because it's part of the conversation that's happening right now, and that really seems to matter to them. I mean, I agree with you that the inclusion of a fair share analysis is sort of a miracle, right? I've never seen one before, ever. I've been looking for them.
Yeah. Miriam, did you have a comment? Question?
Yeah, I don't know if you are all familiar with the Greater Harlem Coalition. We
Yep.
worked, if you need any data on shelters or on any of that in our community, they have it. Sean Hill is a data scientist.
Yeah,
And,
no, Sean, we worked with him on, yeah.
That is your source for all this data on shelters in our community. They have a gold mine. Better than the city.
Yeah, he did a lot of hard work on that.
Yes, and pulling like an email up, this is these same conversations were going on in the health committee back in 2021. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Barry. Pat, I'm so sorry, Pat. You were supposed to remind me, Pat, what did you want to bring up?
No, I was patiently waiting for the other business.
Got it.
Okay,
You're so
I'll be
patient.
quick.
Thank you. Your time.
Well, no, that's okay. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. I had a question about the resolution that we approved. I'm proud to approve, let me say that, for the prohibiting landlords charging renters brokers fees. And again, I'm proud to have supported it. And I'm glad whoever wrote it, it was very good. You all did a great job in putting that together. And I want to thank you. I was humbled by the mention of Riverview Towers in this resolution. But I have a question. I noticed that the resolution only deals with the Assembly Bill, A4781, but there's also a Senate bill, Senate Bill S2783, which appears to be identical. The only difference is, I guess, if you want to call it a difference, the Assembly Bill is endorsed by was sponsored by several Assembly people, including our Al Taylor and our Daniel O'Donnell. But the Senate bill was also supported by senators, including our Senators Cordell Clear and Robert Jackson. So I was wondering, is there going to be another resolution to support the Senate bill, or are we just going to wait? Because I noticed this bill the resolution only covered the Assembly bill. So I just wanted to know, will there be further monitoring of this to find out how it goes?
Well, sorry, what was the Senate bill number again?
Okay, the Senate bill is S as in Senate 2783.
Okay,
and the date.
Trying to look it up.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
No, go. Keep going.
No, according to the bill, the date was January 24th, 2023, and the Assembly bill was dated February 23rd, 2023.
Okay. Prohibits landlord, lessor, sublessor, grudger from demanding broker fees from a tenant. Yeah, I've got it up on the screen here.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks very similar in the Senate.
Yeah.
You're correct.
But our resolution only covered the assembly bill. So I was just wondering, would there be
Yeah,
future support for the Senate bill, or
I-
what's that's going to look like?
yeah, I see that there is a link to ACE 4781, so there's a connection of some sort in this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
No, it was brought by someone and, we could certainly, what do you think, Barry, if, would it be allowed to just do a quick amendment of that? We'd have to vote again. If it looks very similar.
Did we pass this bill already?
Yes, we did. I believe
I
it was
mean,
unanimous
The
at the
reso?
last
Yeah,
at the last general board
vote.
meeting.
I think, I don't think it's worth doing another resolution. I think that
Yeah.
we should just send it to our senators and say that we support, well, actually, I guess we only have one senator now, which is Senator Claire. And if she's on it, then I think we can just send it and say that we are glad she is supporting it. And, you know, our community board is on the record as in favor of it.
Yeah, yeah, so it just would require, yeah, send what we've already passed and say. Thank you for supporting this and we're behind you. See this reso as proof that we're behind you.
And thank you for the correction about I know Robert Jackson isn't officially our senator, but isn't he still our senator?
He'll
You know
always
what I
be,
mean?
he'll always be our
He's
senator.
always going to be our senator, which is why I included him in the discussion. So yes, I know officially Cordell Clear is our senator, but Robert Jackson is always going to be our senator.
Indeed. Okay.
Okay, that was my only question, and I thank you for addressing it.
Thank you, Pat.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We're gonna go on to old business in a second, but I just wanted to reminded me with Cecil Corbin's street naming. We want to get the ball rolling on doing an April Tyler street naming. So we're putting it out into the air. Putting it out into the air. I actually spoke to her, her family about the interest in that, and of course they're definitely interested. It would make sense on the corner of her block by her building. I don't think that one is co-named, so that would probably be the block that makes sense. I kind of ran it by her son and, her mom, and they agreed that would be the block that would make sense. So we should start thinking about this. How does that get started? Do we write a reso on this matter? Do we start, who do we talk to first to get it started? Anybody that can help with that? Or should
I think we write a
office?
resolution, calling for it jointly with Uniform Services Transportation. And then we pass it and send it to the city council, which is ultimately responsible for street co-namings.
Right. And I believe isn't that done through our councilman, Councilman Abreu?
Yes. So when Mark Levine was our council member, I talked to him about renaming 139th Street for Genevieve Eason, who is a former CB9 member of many years and a resident of 626 before she passed. So it's actually a fairly straightforward process.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe we can take a reso we've done in the past and just kind of tailor it, and I'd love to get some personal introspection from the family, maybe, that kind of stuff. Okay, putting it out there. I can get, started on that, just take a previous reso and use that as a template. I'll work on that one. Old business, is Audrey still on? Audrey, do you still, what's your timing as far as, maybe meeting with us to talk on the early side for the zoning for housing opportunity?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So it looks like the formal referral for community boards is going to be at the end of April. And we would be happy, Jose and I would be happy to, prior to that, arrange an informal conversation with either the board or leadership or whoever would like to come, just to hear about some specific concerns that you have. So in advance of, we're 3 weeks likely away at this point, but in advance of that referral to get some questions and then hopefully provide some answers during our presentations and follow-up sessions.
Yeah, I mean, you've been at most of our meetings, probably heard some of our concerns that are already popping up. But do we want to spend, find the time to talk to them, or?
It's still, what's being written is, it's not finalized? I mean, no, it's not finalized. I know the answer to that question.
Yeah,
I think it's just a matter of what version are we to look at before we talk to you?
Sure.
I think that would be important.
I think, yeah, I agree. Right now, the publicly available documents are the EAS and the draft scope of work, but that's, definitely not the text itself. Your May meeting will be the 14th, is that correct?
The May meeting? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let us try to find a time either the week of the 29th or sometime before the 14th. Would that work?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Maybe
I'm quite busy the next couple weeks, but we'll figure it out.
okay, sounds good. We're Jose and I will make ourselves available, as much as we can, either during business hours or afterwards, because we really want to have this conversation with you, in addition to everything that we're hearing at your meetings. So
okay.
I also specifically asked them to number the pages when this comes out. I told them Community Board 9 really wants page numbers, so that I hope that they are there this time for your sake and
you
for
said
mine.
Community Board 9 demands page numbers, right?
Yes, verbatim.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so in the honor of time right now, the only other big thing that we had in old business was 135th Street, 12th Avenue, coming to our meeting next month.
Also in May.
If there's anything really pressing that Clayton, that you found or anything that we needed to discuss, we're also gonna be talking Bus Depot, hopefully May.
I think the question is about Amtrak.
Question is Amtrak. Barry, I know we tried to reach out. We've not heard back, right?
You know what? I'm not sure if we've heard back, and we might have to ask Akil.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen a response to that email.
I haven't either. I looked for it today. I did not see it. So if anybody's wondering what we're talking about, there is so one of the things we do as the community board is vet developers that want to rezone land outside of the zoning that's currently on their land. It goes through the ULURP process, which is Uniform Land Use Review process. And so this developer has come to us before. It is, what did you call it? It's a zombie project, it keeps coming back to life, right? They came to us, couple years back, they want to build around the Amtrak rail. Over it, well, around and over, I guess.
And the Amtrak file that's in the planning document on the ZAP portal, where it says, I forget what it says, it's like Amtrak approval or something is actually Amtrak saying over our dead bodies, like you are not allowed to do this. And
We
that
don't
is
know how
the,
it got.
that is the only Amtrak statement in the ZAP portal for a ULURP that is coming before us in a month, which doesn't make any sense. So I don't know if that, Audrey, if that's something that you all can look into, is there another document from Amtrak and, that they've reviewed, more recently with this project?
Sorry, that the developer has reviewed or that has been shared with city planning?
I don't know how the, sausage gets made. All I know is that I look at the ZAP portal and there are, you know, groupings of documents that we're expected to look at. And the Amtrak, letter in all of those, groups of documents is always the same letter from, I don't know how many years ago that says, we are not in support of this. That's the only letter from Amtrak.
We'd like to
Okay.
know if they have changed their position.
So we've reached out to, I believe we've reached out to Amtrak, back to the people who were in that. I don't know if you can bring that document up on the ZAP portal. But there are names of the Amtrak representatives. And I believe the CB9 office has reached back out to them for comment before this comes in front of us.
Yeah, so Olivia, former planner that I think worked with your board, this is the project she's managing. I am more than happy to forward any questions to her, and I will ask about Amtrak's current position on the development and whether there's additional documentation or their position to share on this.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah,
I've got the letter here from Amtrak if you want to take a look.
Yeah, there are two letters that are fairly direct.
Yeah.
Great. I'll make a note of that and pass on whatever I learn.
Yeah, and again, I know we've mentioned this, and I know Jose said he would note it down for her, but they only need this FAR because, you know, that lot was already subdivided and sold. So, I mean, at one point they wanted to like take a portion of the street and the sidewalk to enlarge their lot. This was back in 2017 or whatever. So, I mean, they're struggling to develop. First of all, it doesn't need to be developed. It could just be rented out as commercial space. But they are struggling to develop it because all of its development rights were already sold. So there aren't more. And now they're like, well, we want a rezoning. And it's like, no, like those development rights have been monetized. Anyway, we will let them have their time to talk next month. But like, this is extremely ill-advised. It sounds like the Planning Commission sees that, but it might help to provide them with all the details of why it's ill-advised.
Oh, this is brand new.
Yeah, this is an article. Thank you, Heather, for sharing. Patch just put this out.
It is the craziest project. Look at that craziness. It's on top
When
of
they
the
came to us,
tree.
they had like barely any windows, right? Or we were like.
Well, they're not, I mean, it was that they were
Can't
not
tell.
allowed to have windows facing the transportation infrastructure.
I see windows above it.
I see windows above it, yeah,
I guess
no,
this is
but
why
it,
they showed that angle in particular, so you can.
right,
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
So
We
there-
asked them, can you show us the other side, please?
You also can't see the George Washington Bridge from there.
I see it peeking out there.
And it-
They're pretending like, oh, on the other side, you can.
Good.
I mean, I just remember that there was discussions of Homeland Security because, you know, this is federal infrastructure and having something that is essentially over and around a piece of highway transportation, or not highway, but transportation.
So if I can just, from the Health and Environment Committee, that's where the city has deemed, like, if there's ever an emergency, that area behind there, that's where the city is gonna set up. Like, it's beyond, like, that's like, if anything goes down in New York, all emergency services set up back there. So them developing there, like, there's a lot of history with that area.
You mean like the sanitation area or what?
Yes, like in an assembly, like an emergency, like post 9/11. I've been on the board many years. And at one point I was on parks, and that area post 9/11, it's like supposed to be like an emergency, like if like they have to assemble, if anything happens, they had to find certain areas where city agencies, state, federal would assemble. Does this ring a bell to anyone?
I thought that might have been the DEP sanitation parking lot
It's that
next
whole
to
area.
next
That-
to
It's that
next
whole
to this.
area behind, like, you know,
I don't think it includes that lot, but it's behind that lot and to the north. It's the area alongside the sewage treatment plant.
exactly. So that access, that's an access point into that area.
135th is, yeah. But
And
I
then
don't,
there's the whole, you know, the pit that's down there. Like, they haven't been able to fix that. And we've even gotten the funding, the okay, because the pipes are one city agency, then it's, do you know what's going on down there?
I'm not aware.
yeah, it's a DDC project, but the DEP is involved because they have to fix the
There's a sewage pipe.
they have to
that they
fix
realize-
the sewer interceptor, which is a giant box basically. And so they've got to repair the pipes before DOT can repair the street. And then they're also, I think, we pushed them very hard to include additional stormwater drains at the foot of the stairs where Riverside Park comes down, because that always got flooded in heavy rains.
Correct. So
And
all of
they're
this-
also going to extend the sidewalk on the west side of the street all the way up to 138th Street so that it connects with the sidewalk next to Jenny's Garden.
And this is all clearly documented.
Probably not. I mean, they've
It's
presented
in our
to
district
us.
needs, in our district asks for many years. And the city gave us those responses.
Very
Okay,
much.
well, we'll see what they say next month.
I think between Signy and I, Barry, you, maybe Victor, and the staff, we need to continue to pull information together before this presentation next month.
Yeah.
May I say something?
Lois,
Go ahead,
yes.
Lois.
I saw DOT at the mayor's meeting yesterday. The project down there has been approved. They're finishing up the plans. They did not give me a start date. I can share the name of the person. I'll go get his card and I'll put it in the text for you to follow up. I'll also inform Victor as to what took place and what was said. So it is scheduled to be.
I'm sorry, Lois? Lois,
Huh?
what project are you referring to?
12th Avenue, the sewer line.
The sewer project.
Oh, the sewer line, okay.
12th Avenue. They said the plans have been approved. They're working on tweaking it. They're going to put sidewalks on both sides of the street. As Barry said, they're adding more drains and they're fixing the sewer line that collapsed. So he said it has already been approved. They're finishing up the plans. They don't have a start date yet.
Okay.
And this was one of the commissioners from DOT.
Okay,
And Victor said he's going to follow up.
very good.
Yep, 903.
Yeah, I am just going to put it up one more time in case there is anything under old business that needs to be addressed, but
Do
I
we
don't
have,
have anything.
do we have a RKO Hamilton Theater,
We need
task
to take
force
someone out to
leader
dinner.
yet?
We need to take someone out to dinner. And talk about it. We are, yes,
We did have a good suggestion, didn't we?
we did, we need to take them out to dinner.
Okay.
We haven't done that
I
yet.
don't remember.
We'll call her out offline, but
Hopefully it's not me.
no, it's. But, with that said, unless there are any further updates or items for the agenda, before we close, I am going to ask for, an adjournment, but there's really not official, so a, call to close the meeting to attention.
Sounds,
A call to distract, I move to distract the meeting.
Distract. Who wants to second that? All right, seconded by me, and nobody
Thank
distracted
you,
the meeting.
everyone. You wanna stop
Thank
sharing?
you very much.
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone. Thank you.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
See you next month for a big meeting.
Thank you.
Please,
Yep, we have a
please
lot
come and
to
tell
do next
everyone.
week.
We should